All right, so the next activity I want to do is catch up my live version of my issue tracker with my current code base. Now, you could see this is kind of where I was at the start of today. It was using the old array that was just kind of hard-coded into my Express app. And so I have a newer version that we just kind of finished up that I want to update my deployment to. And so I have a bookmark for the Google Cloud Council. And so, this is kind of what we had to sign up for to get access to this hosting. And so I did rename my project the Gudmestead Issue Tracker. And when you click on Gudmestead Issue Tracker, I guess there's another project that I have here that it was just given to me for free that I'm not using. So it looks like I have a couple of projects, but the one that I want to update is the Gudmestead Issue Tracker. Now, no organization, that's fine. Once I'm here, so this is, again, to kind of go to the council.cloud.google.com is the URL that I start at, and I'm logged in. This is my personal Gmail that I use. You're going to have to authenticate with the credentials that you've already signed up with. So Gudmestead Issue Tracker, and then I kind of demonstrated this before. We use this app engine to deploy. So once I'm here, I'm going to click on Go to App Engine Dashboard. This is where I can find the URL to the live version of my site. And so click on this, and this is the live on the internet URL that I'm going to be updating. And again, this could be changed to a custom domain, whatever.com. Whatever domain that you buy, you can update this URL and kind of redirect and all that kind of stuff. So but that's the issue at hand. Now, new laptop, I got to download the tools again to do this deployment and actually run through the configuration. You probably don't have to do that. So that's the step that I need to take next is download the tools to do this deployment. Now, to do that, App Engine SDK, download and install the SDK, App Engine. This is Node. Install Git, we've already got that. Optional tools. Install the latest release of Node, already have done that. Install and initialize the G-Cloud CLI for deploying and managing your apps. Install the G-Cloud CLI. See all features to access the cloud API using some libraries, installation, Windows. There it is, Google CLI installer. This was the tool that took a while for me to install last time on my old laptop because it was old. Hopefully it goes faster now. I do not need beta commands. While that's doing that, I'll go ahead and, since I preached about committing early and committing often, let's go ahead and switch to my issue tracker. And I will updated per lab requirements and added here. I'm just going to uncheck all these database, bug, server. So push that as one commit, and then this will be added static add user functionality. Commit and push that separately. Kind of did two different things there. Okay, this does take a little bit of time, so I'll pause. Okay, so that just takes a while is what it boils down to. Now that that's done, we'll click next, and definitely want to run gcloud init and start the shell, create the desktop. These are all fine. I'm just going to do all that. Yes. And selecting that account and allowing. Now this one, my ID on my project was this Tribal Flux 3877, that one right there, just to verify that. Go back here, Tribal Flux 387714, Tribal Flux 387714-2. Okay, so that brings us here, and that's so run gcloud cheat sheet to see a roster of go-to commands. Configured and ready to use. Here's my cheat sheet name. Getting started, gcloud init, we already did that. Gcloud version, components install, update. There's more. Personalization, help. I was just looking at this cheat sheet earlier. There's my app deploy command that we're going to run. Gcloud app browse. So there's two commands that I'm interested in. App browse and app deploy. So hit space to kind of go to the end. And okay, hit escape to get me out of that. Let's see if I hit gcloud app browse. Opens that up, right? Cool. Okay, so my terminal should be configured now. Let's go back here and let's see how this breaks. So the command that I'm interested in is my app deploy, gcloud app deploy. That's the one command that we ran last time. Gcloud app deploy. I mentioned briefly that we're gonna have to open up some terminal doesn't recognize it, and so I'm gonna open up a new terminal, new terminal, maybe gcloud. Okay, so let's see if I can open up a new I'm going to reboot Visual Studio. File, exit, issue tracker.
Mr. G, how do you get out of the cheat sheet? I'm trying to enter another
I had to hit escape.
escape. Okay.
Yeah. Pause. It's right now my terminal's not recognizing the command. That's a path issue, which I know how to fix. So let me pause this just for a second. Okay, so this terminal in Visual Studio, you might not realize this. I certainly didn't when I was new. You can open up multiple different types of commands, and so notice this says PowerShell. PowerShell is kind of an advanced command line, and so if you're scripting. You need more, I don't know, it's an advanced command line, right? So the command prompt, CMD, has been around forever. PowerShell is kind of like within the last 10 years or something. And so if I were to go to my command prompt, I can stop it, right? So by default, you kind of see the PowerShell's open. I can kill it, delete it, and then you do terminal, new terminal. It opens up a new PowerShell window by default. Now, there's other command prompts. There's a git bash, which is a git terminal. But the command prompt, if I type in the word path, you'll notice that my path does include down here the Google Cloud SDK. And so in a command prompt, this gcloud was recognized. I can type in gcloud, and at least, I didn't give it a good command because you needed more information with it, but at least recognizes what gcloud is. So let's try our command here, gcloud app deploy. Okay, so tribal flex, target service, and that's all the stuff we configured. Now, again, what I'm going to need to do is figure out the IP addresses that I need to open up on my firewall for Mongo Atlas, because pushing this out on the internet, I don't know the IP address of the server. There's a private IP address and there's a public IP address, so that's going to be the next step to kind of open that firewall up. Now, as we're sitting here, realize there's a couple of files that I already had on here that I did in the prior deployment video. So if you're erroring out and you don't have this app.yaml file, you're going to want to go back and it basically tells your server what version of Note. That's the only file you had to add, and then it added a gcloud ignore file for me. Okay, now if I do gcloud app browse, not what I expected. This is my old app. that might be cached on my browser. So what I want to do is throw it in a different browser that's not cached and get rid of that pound, get rid of that extra slash, typo. And let's see if this, okay. Well, that's a different error, and I'm actually glad that that's the case. Because it's not my old browser. It's not my old one. Grant, what's the result on your end?
The exact same thing.
Exact same thing. Okay, good. Let's look. Okay, when I refreshed a couple times on Chrome, it gave me the same error. So good. So on Google Cloud, it does look like there's an error, which says invalid scheme, expected connection string to start with this or that. And so kind of curious here in config. We have production JSON, and I'm going to copy that into production because it's really not, it's .env is where I get my database URL, and db URL. And so maybe because this is not configured in production, maybe that's causing a problem. But basically, it's not connecting to my database. Now, I also kind of knew that Mongo was going to cause some issues. So temporarily, I think the easy solution is to go into Mongo and open it wide open temporarily, at least. So maybe I do that first. Maybe just open it wide up before I. This is issue tracker network access, and let's click on add an IP address and allow access from anywhere. Is this button you want to click, and maybe delete this in one day, because I do need to kind of come back and lock this down a little bit more. So maybe we just do that temporarily. That's kind of a neat little feature. But I don't think that's going to fix it, because it's saying that it's not even seeing my, it's not seeing like the connection string. It's not saying the IP address was blocked. It's saying it doesn't see the connection string. If I go back to that error message, let me close that. Close that. Yeah, so again, kind of looking closely at the error, it says it's expected the connection string to start with, this is what our connection string starts with. So it's not even reading that, which to me lends to the fact that it's not configured in this production, because that's the whole point of config. So now, before I redeploy it, let me control click this, open it, getting the same error. So even though I opened up the access on my network, it's still giving me this error, 500 server error. And if I refresh this, 9 occurrences, because I keep hitting it and it keeps crashing. So let's go back. Now that I made that change to my production JSON, and if I really need to, I can just go around this config package. Quite honestly, I could kind of fix it a different way. I could go into here and instead of config get, we can just go back to the .env. So if this config is giving us some problems, actually that's not in server.js. It would be in the database module, which is database here, and here's a config get. We can reconfigure that next if this continues to be a problem. So let's go back here and run this again. Gcloud app deploy with our production JSON modified. And I'm going to hit yes and just pause this until it's done. Okay, that finished, and it appears we're getting the same error, 12 occurrences. Invalid scheme. Okay. Well, it's not playing nice with config, so let's go into here. DB URL. Now, if I run this, node mon, npm run start dev. Okay, it is running locally with the process env. Now, back on server.js, even though it's erroring here, it is recognized and the database is pinging locally. Let me close production. This kind of has a backup, right? So if it doesn't get config here, it backs up to 5001 or localhost. So no big deal on server. So reconfigure that. Let me close yes. So the next step to try is to just go back to the process.env. 1 second. Okay. Third time is a charm, so it's running locally again, just to kind of run it locally. npm run start dev. Connects to the database, ping the database, no problem. So clear the screen, redeploy. Now using the .env. All right, life is good. We now have an updated issue tracker with users coming back from the database. So it was an issue with my config package, which we can troubleshoot that, but man, I am happy. Our users, list all users, add new user. Dare we try?
This is up to you. So basically, you could do
New user added. Go back, list all users. There we go. Grant, did you have the luck that I had?
Not quite.
All
My
right.
home page is up, but everything else is giving me that same error.
Did you allow all the data through the firewall? Did you allow?
Yeah.
You did that on Mongo?
Yeah.
All right. Let's take a look. I'm going to pause the recording and see if I can't fix you. All right. Happy moment. So, the issue that Grant was having was we have different projects, and mflix is where all of our sample data is, and issue tracker v2 and issue tracker, that's where his database is for his issue tracker. And so accidentally he opened up the network access on mflix instead of on issue tracker, and so he was getting connection denied. But the point is, both Grant and I have a live version of our app on Google Cloud, working with our database now.
Tools, right?
To dig a little deeper, we did change this, and that enabled that to work instead of using config. And the question becomes, do I want to troubleshoot this now? And I think I do. And so if I Control Z this,
Specify target name.
Yes, long SVR.
this is going to reintroduce the bug.
Address.
172.16.0.22.
Yep, 22. Okay.
Clear the screen, but it runs locally. Okay, so we're running locally. And we haven't redeployed, so we are running live too. So the question becomes, why does it not want to use my config package?
Target disks created, so let's close that.
And then it wants to create another one.
And so, basically we're telling our server to use config, and then when we hit database, file,
Oh, gotcha.
we bring in config, import config from config, and then we say config.get db URL, which should, in theory, go to production db URL and get the db URL from here, db URL, which ultimately points at our .env.
Then you'll do the same thing again, but you're going to need it.
I have a feeling if I redeploy this, I haven't really made any changes. Do not follow along. If it's in a working state, Grant, just let me troubleshoot, because this is going to break it again.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, for right now, I'm battling this problem, but I'm not going to get stuck over it. I'm going to skip the config package for now and just use the .env file. That's in a working state. And so I'm going to temporarily not worry about the config in this file. And
That's what it was right there.
live to see another day. So I'll get this back in a working state.
Are you still running through it again?
And that'll be the end. Okay, just to demo this working in its working state at the end of this video, we're getting our users from the database. And we're able to add a user as we've demonstrated. list our bugs. No, I didn't test the bugs. Pause. Interesting, my bugs are working. That might have been cached, the fact that it was getting an error message. You just never know if it's cached or not until you refresh 10 times. But that's the fun part of being a web developer, is you get to think something is broke when it's not broke, and you get to think something is fixed when it's not fixed until you refresh the cache out of there. Okay, we are up and running.